Let the battle begin.
I know, I'm scared.
You should be.
This is the big one.
Is it?
Yeah.
Why?
Because this is making me nervous doing this comparison.
Because you spent £1,000 more on your Z7ii than your Z6ii.
And I'm not sure it's
worth it.
Extra but this 50. Is what will prove that it is worth it.
Extra 50%.
This is what will prove this Z7. Yeah, it's the Z7. That's the thing with it. I can't tell which is which. Even on a shoot, when I'm doing weddings, I look at the photos when I get back.
That's why I've got a little bit of Dymo tape on the top of mine.
When I look at the results.
If you can't see the difference, you're going to go straight on eBay.
For me, I come from a D850, a legendary camera, the best I've ever used. So the obvious evolution of that was the Z7 because it's the same megapixels. So once I used your Z6, I thought, well, this is rubbish. But then I slowly got used to
rubbish.
And then I slowly got used to the new features such as the live viewfinder, the autofocus, the lightness of the camera, the sharpness is better.
So I came from the D750, so I went to the Z6 because that was my obvious sort of roadmap, D750 to Z6, but really wanted it to be arguably better in video and in low light.
You can look up the specs online, the differences, you can have a little list of them side by side, but what we like to do with our videos is to show the real life difference in the experience of using it. I mean, the Z7 has more focus points, but is there an actual difference in there? The ISO can go down to 64, whereas the Z6ii can't. But again, is there any real difference? And low light, now that's an interesting one because the ISO on the Z6 is a lot higher capability, but it also has.
What do you mean that it's a higher capability?
Yeah.
Don't they both have a high?
No.
Don't they both have the same maximum?
No.
Well, they got a different maximum.
Yeah.
Oh, right. Okay.
On paper, the Z6ii should be a lot better in low light, but it has the filter on it. Does the AA filter make an actual difference in real life use for either stills or video? So the difference in £1,000,
50%.
50% increase. So it'll just be really interesting to see if the Z7 actually pulls its weight compared to the price increase. I mean, on paper, I think the Z7 should be a lot cheaper.
Yeah, because it's not a 50% better camera.
Well, in some things it's worse. Let's find out.
Let's find out.
I'm scared. Okay, so here's an image comparison. So the Z6 will always be on the left, the Z7 on the right. Well, at wide open at 24, same settings, it's the same. I don't think you're ever going to tell much difference at this kind of wide open. Let's crop in. So at 100% on both of them, obviously the Z6 is a bit further out because of the difference in megapixels. Again, they're both nice images. We can even try and crop in with the Z6 the same as the Z7 to see if it holds up. I think at 100% the Z7 does look like a crisper, sharper image. That's because of the megapixels. It's twice as many. So you can see on the Z7 it's a usable image still. This is at 200% and 250% on the Z6. So at 70, same settings. Again, they look pretty much the same. Obviously maybe the weather slightly changed with the light, a few minutes apart, but generally they both look good. So at 100%, the puppet looks quite sharp on the Z6, but obviously it's naturally closer on the Z7, 100%. So in this one I've gone down to ISO 64 on the Z7 at 70mm, and just to see really the difference. So you can see the Z7 at ISO 64 creates a much sharper image than the Z6 at ISO 100, and obviously with the lower megapixels. I mean, the texture there, you can see quite a lot there going on, nice contrast, whereas the Z6 is soft and it can't really see much going on, and it's a bit kind of colour damage there, colour noise. So this is on the edge of the frame on the same picture. Again, the Z7 at ISO 64 is a more pleasant image. Z6 is quite a bit soft as well, but this is at 200%. Okay, so this is a portrait test. I use SnapBridge, as you can see my camera in the frame there. Same settings using the 85, and well, without cropping, they both look nice. They're both fine. You can't really see any sharpness difference there. Maybe the Z7, if you really look, is sharper from this perspective. But let's crop in to see. Okay, so this I've cropped into the same amount, even though the Z7 can crop more. I wanted just to see at 100% on the Z6 to see if there's any difference. And you can see my darkened eyes a bit more on the Z7, unfortunately. On the Z6 you can't so much, but the depth of field looks about the same, possibly. But on portraits you don't want too much sharpness. Obviously it's not very flattering. So cropping in more, you can see that the Z7 is still sharp, especially you can see the wrinkles on the top of my eyes. On the Z6 you can't. But for portraits you don't want that, but say if you're doing any other photography such as product or wildlife, you want as much clarity as possible. So that's where the Z7 would pull away on that one. So looking at my chin, unfortunately, sorry about this, but yeah, you can see the Z7 has a lot more detail and contrast. Especially in this area, you can see bits of all kinds of things going on, but you can't on the Z6 Ding 1. And this is low light. Well, this is extremely low light. This was about 11 o'clock at night, and even though it looks like an evening picture, that's actually moonlight coming through from there, and it's taken obviously at 1/10, 1.8, and 51,200 ISO on the Z6. On the Z7 it can only go to 25,600, and you can see the difference there. It's very obvious. Okay, so on the Z6 there it's distorted, but it's not bad. Let's sync it up with the... Right, so on the Z7 obviously you can crop in further naturally, get 100%. So you can see the quality difference there, cropping in 100%. This is about 80% on the Z7. You can see the difference is quite dramatic. So with low light, the Z6 pulls away massively. I mean, that's a usable image on the Z6, the Z7 isn't. What I've done now is I've edited the photos to get the best out of them, to see if the Z7 can restore light, as it's a higher megapixel camera. From this, they look quite similar now, from a distance. So without cropping in, they look very similar now. Even the Z7 looks a bit even crisper there, but again, when you zoom in, you can see the difference. So there's the obvious difference there with the Z6 and Z7. The Z6 is still distorted, obviously, but the Z7 is completely, you know, it's really noisy. But without cropping in, they look quite similar after an edit. Okay, so I wanted to compare ISO 64 on the Z7 to ISO 100, of course, on the Z7 as well. And this is obviously an example of 50mm lens. So you can't really tell unless you're going to crop in. So let's crop in. Sync that up. Okay, well, obviously the ISO 100 is a bit brighter. There's hardly any, I can't see any difference there, really. Nothing in it. Obviously the ISO 100 is a bit brighter, so you can see in the shadows a bit more, but no, not any difference. But obviously ISO 64 gives you more options for shutter speed in bright lights and other shooting options, I suppose. But for detail, I can't see any difference now. Okay, so now I've got the Z6ii versus the Z7ii, and the sun came out a bit more, so the screens aren't so good, even though we try to shield it. Here's it in real time. Okay, so you can see there, again, only a few frames in it. Let's track back. Okay, so yeah, the Z7 gets it there. About 2 or 3 frames afterwards, the Z6 gets it. And then they're pretty much identical after that once they click in. Here's the second run. again, the Z7ii just kicks in a few frames, or milliseconds you could say, just before it. And again, it's really good at tracking me, doing my silly dance. Okay, now this is video. It'd be interesting to see, compare with video, and if there is much difference, because the Z6 has the filter and the Z7 doesn't, but it has to process video in a different way because of that. So this is the Z6ii, looks really nice. This is the Z7ii. Okay, so here's the comparison. Again, I can't see any difference. If anything, the Z6ii looks a bit brighter, but that could just be the weather. But let's have a look. The depth of field looks the same, the quality looks the same. Really nice, by the way. Oh, okay, right, so really close up, shooting with a 50mm at 1.8. If you concentrate on the IO in the glasses, very similar. If anything, the Z6 is a bit more detailed, but that could just be the focus because it's at 1.8. Okay, even more extreme close-up now. So again, no real difference between them, I don't think, in the daytime. Extreme close-up. And there's checking the focus speed. Again, exactly the same really, using autofocus. So this is the Z6ii. I'm checking the sharpness. I'm using the good old puppet to see the sharpness of the tongue part. So yeah, this is a moving image, and it's the Z7ii. They look exactly the same from 50mm. So now I've cropped in, and well, I can't really tell any difference. Cropped in again. Maybe, oh no. They look, if you look at the fringes, here, the Z7 is pixelated. The Z6 isn't. But the actual tongue area looks the same. But that's the only real difference I can see. I think now I switch to f4 to give it a bit more of a chance of focus. Again, it's the same. Yeah, I can't really tell any difference there. Okay, now I've took the puppet indoors and I closed the curtains, so this is really dark, shooting at 25,000 ISO. And there's the Z7. Looks a bit more pixelated, doesn't it? And here we go, is the close-up. So you can see the Z6 is doing a bit better. If you look at the dark patches here especially, it's black and nice. I mean, it's still pixelated a bit, but compared to the Z7, it's really messy. The sharpness is similar, but again around the eye there it's pixelated, and it is there a bit and not so much. So this is where I'm testing the focus speed of, well, changing to a different subject. So I chose the remote controls here on both of them. I switched the remote control quickly, maybe because the contrast is simple. Then choosing back to it is really slow. The Z6 did it there, you can see, but the Z7 is still trying to find in and out, and yeah. This is showing the Z7 now, just trying to find focus because it took that long, and it's still, there we go. Right, I think they should be the same price.
Really? What, as expensive as the Z6ii?
Yeah.
It shouldn't be cheaper than the Z6ii.
No.
Same price?
Same price.
This is your big reveal.
This is my big reveal. This is my conclusion.
Because the benefits are equalled by the deficiencies.
Yes.
If that makes sense.
Yeah, no, it does make sense because they're good at different things,
right,
but no better than each other.
Right.
So for me, the Z7 is, from my test and from what my user experience is, of my user case, for me, is that the Z7 is good for daytime and cropping in. It's really nice to just cropping on a bit of an image, blow it up, and you've got a really nice image still. But the Z6 is really good at low light. Really, really good at low light. Much better than the Z7. So, I value those at the same weight.
Yeah. Just for clarification, every time we say Z6 and Z7, we mean the Mark II version.
The Z7 is £1,000 more. The Z6 is just as useful, but in a different scenario.
And they justify that £1,000 more because of the 47 megapixel sensor, really.
Which really only landscape people need, I think, in my opinion.
Yeah. And wildlife getting
well, with wildlife, that's the thing. With the Z6, you can get a different lens.
Yeah.
Get a longer lens. I suppose ideally you could have a Z7 with the longer lens as well. Then you've got an extra.
Well, that's funny because that's what I always used to say to you. Like, I want to crop. I need 47 megapixels because I like to crop. And I used to just jokingly say, just use the right lens.
Yeah. Because going back 10 years ago when I first started using DSLRs, ISO performance was so bad.
Yeah.
Anything above 500 ISO was almost pixelated.
Yeah.
So I was desperate for a new camera which performed well in ISO low light.
Yeah.
For my use case and for general use case as well, I wanted low light performance. The Z6 is a master of that. The 51,200 is incredible for me.
So really, your ideal setup would be the cameras you've got, but both at the same price, really.
Yes. So yeah, if I didn't have either, I would go for the Z6 too.
Yeah.
But as I have the Z7, I like it. They're both brilliant cameras. There's hardly anything really difference between them, apart from the low light, which is a massive difference for me. So now I've got the Z7, I probably, when the next one comes along, I'll probably exchange it for the new one.
For like the Z6 Mark III or the Z9 or whatever it is.
Or if they build on the Z7 and make it even better, then it might be worth the extra jump then.
Because I must admit, we haven't spoken about the results of the test you did while I was away on holiday, but I couldn't really see any difference between the two, and you had to really zoom in to determine any differences. So in the day-to-day practical real-life use, get it on eBay.
But that's what's so annoying about it. It's £1,000 more, and you think you'd be a better camera, but it's not. It's only better in certain cases.
Yeah. In your practical use.
I love cropping in though. It's great fun to be able to crop in.
Because it's not like it's only 20%. I mean, £1,000. We keep saying it's 50% extra. That's a lot of money relatively, isn't it? Yeah. $3 grand camera compared to a $2 grand.
Do you have any other thoughts around this? I mean, we're open to criticism and constructive criticism because that's helped us develop our own understanding of photography. Yeah. So if you didn't have any camera, which one would you go for? And you only can get one.
The Sony A1. No, I'm joking.
But even so,
so I wouldn't choose a Z7. No, I'd definitely stick with the Z6.
No, if I didn't have either, I'd just choose the Z6 II, maybe get two of them, and wait for the next ones in line, see what differences there are.
Yeah.
Because really, if I was a dedicated landscape photographer, or if I needed that crop for the day-to-day interest or even for work, then the Z7 is the obvious choice. If you're a landscape photographer, definitely the Z7, I would say. Because if you want to print big and you want to get every single detail throughout the frame, you get that extra 20%, I would say.
Yeah.
But everything else, Z6 II, Mark II. But it's a bit of a disappointment one for me, because I don't know, I was hoping that Z7 would really pull away from it. But it just didn't.